Hi everyone, this is Long Vo. Today is October the 30th, 2012. I'm analyzing one of my games in the Burlington Chess Club. I'm playing black, currently rated 1590, and my opponent Justin Swain rated 1531. So we're pretty much equally rated, and my opponent starts off with e4, and I decided to try the Carol Khan. I've been reading up a little bit on it, and this is really my first time playing it. So I go c6, and he takes control of the center with d4, and I counter with d5, challenging his center pawn, and he decides to do the exchange variation with e takes d and c takes d. Now he develops the bishop to d3, and I develop my knight to c6, putting pressure on the his d pawn, and he defends with c3. So I guess he's taking away a good square for the knight, so I assume the knight will be here, and before that he's probably going to develop the bishop somewhere. The idea here is probably, well, I think his move here, the point is he doesn't want to commit the knight just yet. Let's go back one move. So he doesn't want to commit the knight. Oops, sorry. So after my knight c6, he doesn't want to commit his knight because that would simply help me develop my light squared bishop outside of my pawn chain, because I'm planning to play e6 eventually. By playing the pawn to a c3, he's really playing against this light squared bishop, because obviously it doesn't have any good squares to go to because it's under attack. So I decide to develop the knight to f6, with the idea of later on developing the bishop, and then e6. Because I think the worst thing that I want to happen right here is that the light square bishop doesn't have anywhere to go, and I'm eventually forced to play e6, and then I'm sort of like in a French defense, but I lost a little bit of time, so that I want to avoid. So I play knight to f6, and he goes bishop to f4. So of course I think he's trying to get the knight out and not block the dark square bishop. So he has good control over this diagonal here. I think another option, instead of going my knight here, I could have gone the queen here and secure the diagonal here, so it would sort of lock the bishop in from developing here. I'm not too familiar with all the main lines. Anyways, I played f6, and after bishop to f4, I went bishop to g4, getting it out of the pawn chain. So eventually I will play e6, and perhaps retreat the bishop somewhere and offer an exchange here. So that's, I guess, in the Carol Khan, the light squared bishop is not as important as his light squared bishop, so that exchange would benefit black. So now he retreats the queen to b3, putting pressure on the my b pawn here, so there's a couple of moves that I can make here. Obviously the rook cannot defend because of the bishop, and the idea of advancing the pawns, leaving the knight kind of unguarded there, just opens doors for tactics, and so I think the queen here needs to defend that pawn. So I have a choice between d7 or c8. I chose queen to c8 because well, because in the reading up on the Caracal, if I put the queen to d7, it opens up opportunities for later on the knight to gain a tempo on the queen. So that's number one. And number two is eventually this knight may want to use the d7 square to put pressure on the e5 square. So that's the reason why I went queen to c8, and he goes knight to d2 as expected, and so now I go e6. So now my pawn chain is complete. I don't really have any weaknesses. I don't like this dark squared bishop here, and that's the only thing that's really bothering me. And also the dark squared bishop here doesn't really have anywhere good to go, so perhaps e7 eventually and castling or something like that. And yeah, this diagonal here and here on the king side doesn't really make it comfortable for me to castle king side, so I'm holding off on that for now. And so he develops knight to f3, probably with the idea of putting pressure here somewhere, and that's why I wanted to leave the square open for the knight to reinforce the e5. And so I retreat the bishop to h5, following my idea of exchanging light squared bishops, and also I don't want his knight to gain a tempo on my light squared bishop once it goes here, and then I'm basically forced to take, because then the bishop, I don't want to move it then and then give him opportunities to attack, right? So he does go knight to e5, and so there are a couple of options here. One option is to take with to retreat the knight here, and both knights put pressure on the knight, and he doesn't really have any attacking options here. So if he takes, I simply take with the queen, and if he takes the other knight, taking with the queen is a possibility, or even advancing the b pawn towards the center, opening up this b file here for potential attacks. But it's just adding another pawn to the center, which is a good thing, and it blocks off any potential checks from the light squares. So that was one option, and the other option that I chose was to simply take with the knight. So knight takes e5, and if he takes with the bishop, I don't see the big deal. So he decided to take with the pawn instead. So that's really forcing my knight to find a better square. And of course, I have knight to d7, putting pressure on his e pawn. And so now I have my eye on this pawn. So I'm thinking right now, how am I gonna exert pressure, add attackers to it? One possibility is to fianchetto the dark squared bishop. Obviously the knight is exerting pressure. Maybe moving the queen here, eventually just adding a lot of pressure. And as long as the bishop is there, he can't move the pawns, and plus if he castles and moves the pawns, it may weaken the king's side. So he castles short, and I retreat the bishop to g6, offering an exchange here. So now he goes c4. So here it was kind of strange. Well, obviously he's connecting the queen to the light squared bishop, so if I take, he takes back, and I guess it's okay, and he's just putting a lot of pressure on the center here. So that was one possibility. But when he went there, I got excited a bit there. I thought that he blundered, so I went knight to c5. a double attack on the queen and the bishop, but then now there's two attackers on the bishop, so I thought that, well, the queen, anywhere she retreats, that piece will fall, right? And so I thought I was winning a piece, but what I forgot was the the light square diagonal here is really weak. So he went queen to b5 check, and so here I thought for a really long time, and retreating the knight didn't look too good, or else he would just break the center. And the other choice was to exchange queens. So either queen to d7 or to c6. I chose queen to c6. I'm not sure why, and but I guess I offered an exchange of queens. I suppose I wanted to stay connected to the knight there, even though it already had a defender. And so here I was thinking, well, he had the option to take with the pawn, and then he would be attacking my queen, and then I would simply take the bishop, and he would, he can't take back. If he takes my queen with the pawn, then I simply take back with the bishop, and I'm okay. And if he continues taking, then I'll probably take with the knight, and then I'll be okay, and then I can continue development and add pressure on this pawn. The other option is if the queen takes, then I take back, and he takes back, and that's fine as well. I think I'm up a piece here, so I would have been happy with that, but instead he played bishop takes g6, which I think was the best move, and I went h takes g6, opening the h file for the rook, and even though my pawns are messed up here, I still felt safe, and then so now he had a decision to make. Would he exchange queens or take with the pawn and break down my center? Of course he cannot take with the pawn, because I'll simply take the queen. And going back to the other option is, he could have so if he had taken here and I didn't feel like taking with my queen, because then he would simply take back with temple, and then I would have to either move the king and be permanently discastled. He would have a strong center, or like even if I retreat the knight here, he can simply exchange, and I can no longer castle. So that was another thought that came to my mind. So if he was to take with the pawn, I would definitely take with the bishop first. So he decided to go queen takes c6 and b takes c6. So I'm okay, because so now if he takes and I take back, I still have a strong center, and I have these open files for the rook, and I would have been happy with that. And so of course he didn't do that. He went b3, just reinforcing this pawn. I had no intention of taking anyways, because that would leave me with this isolated pawn, and once he takes back with the knight, his pawns are stable, no weaknesses, whereas me, isolated pawn and double pawn. So taking was not an option, and but I was waiting for him to take, and I would simply take back, and I would have been fine. So I decided to go rook to h5. The purpose of this move is to first of all exert pressure on this pawn. I'm controlling g5 for the eventual push here, just to kick out the bishop. So I'm trying to find a way to untangle my pawns here. Of course I have no intention of bringing the rook in here, or else there's some tactics that he can trap the rook. But here the rook is just a little bit more active and participating in adding pressure to the e-pawn. I'm not sure if that's the best move. Perhaps I should be thinking of developing like the bishop or the other rook. I don't know. So this move just felt that it made sense because I have this open H file, and doing a rook lift to H5 was the fastest way to add pressure on the E5 pawn. The other option, the reason why I chose the rook lift is because the other option would be to perhaps somehow move the knight here or here to put pressure on this pawn, or even the bishop here to put pressure, but that just seemed very slow. I didn't like the idea of simply challenging that pawn there, because if he exchanges, yes, I'll correct the pawn structure, but then I felt that even though my pawns were doubled, that I had the opportunity to really take this pawn for free. So I thought that adding the rook and eventually moving the knight, and with the rook here, the idea was as well to start pushing pawns to kick away this bishop, and then push the other pawn, and then fianchetto the bishop to add more pressure. So I felt that that was a faster way of exerting pressure on the E5 pawn. So now he retreats the bishop to G3. I suppose he's intending to use the other pawn to defend. And that would have been okay for me, because if he did that, this dark diagonal here would be perfect for my bishop to eventually take control of once the knight retreats, and that would be good for me. But afterwards I decided to go G5 to try to shut down the bishop here. So the bishop is really passive here. That's number one. Number two is with the idea of pushing the G pawn eventually to fianchetto, and afterwards to push the for G4 to open the fifth rank here to attack the pawn, and then eventually bring the knight in, either here or here. I'm just waiting for him to do something like this, so then I could later on fork the rook and put pressure on the e pawn, or if you went the rook the other way, I could do the same. So now he goes rook to D1, the rook A to D1, and so I guess he's putting a lot of pressure on the center here, with perhaps the idea of I don't know, exchanging and eventually just putting pressure, maybe doubling rooks. But the minute that he exchanges this pawn here, there's no other pawns to challenge the center, so I was okay with that. I didn't see rook to D1 as a threat. So I continue with so here, the fact that he moved his rook here, I felt that there was one less defender on the A pawn, so I decided to push for A5, just to prevent him gaining space. And the idea here was maybe I may want to keep pushing here, and if there's an exchange, then my other rook, the A rook, would become more active. So I'm not sure if that was a good move. I should have advanced the other pawn on the king side and continue my attack on the e pawn. But anyways, I just felt like playing this for now, just to gain some space, and I just felt that if I played this now and he plays b4, then he would have sort of more control on this side, and eventually he could even push the other pawn and then shut down my dark squared bishop. So I felt that this move was a prophylactic move that made sense. and the fact that he moved his rook from here to here, and once I move my pawn here, it sort of made him think twice that maybe moving this rook created some sort of a weakness on the queen side, so maybe it's just psychological. And same thing, the fact that he moved it, I thought about the queen side. So now he goes rook to e1. So I think he's following good development principles here, putting his rooks on the most open files that he can find, and my rook here is quite inactive, so I think what he's doing is correct. And also overprotecting the e pawn, because he's probably feeling something's up here, right? So I follow my plan with g6, with the idea to fianchetto the dark square bishop to add pressure here. And I like this rook here because then once I move the knight, and it's like gaining a tempo on this pawn here. So I was happy with that. There's another possibility of placing my knight on this outpost, but this knight here is controlling that, so I'm waiting for that knight to move as well. And he goes rook to e3. So I think here he wasn't sure what to do, and I'm not sure if rook to e3 really improved the position of his rook, because his rook was just as active here than here. So here I'm not sure what it was really protecting. This pawn is not really threatened. The bishop is okay. It's protected by two pawns, so there's no tactics there. And I don't know, maybe he wanted to double rooks or something. So he felt that this was a more active square for his rook. So I continue my plan with bishop to g7, and so now my plan is very clear to him that I'm intending on attacking this, or maybe he went the rook to e3 to prevent the knight from coming here. So I suppose there was a purpose for that move. But anyways, now my intentions are clear to attack this pawn. But here I was kind of worried that he would I don't know, do something like this that could prevent me from advancing my my g pawn, or something like this. So then now I can't really advance a g pawn to connect the rook. So I think that was kind of concerning me, and I think he should have done something like that. Instead he went knight to f3, and that's when I saw the move of knight to e4, trapping his dark squared bishop. So I was really happy with this move when he moved his knight, because now his bishop has nowhere to go. The pawn would simply take, or here. And once I exchanged knights for the dark squared bishop, one of his pawns will be doubled. So I was really happy with that move, and he followed with knight to d4, putting pressure on my c pawn. And so obviously I felt that this had to be taken care of immediately. I didn't want him to have any chance to escape here. And the fact that he went knight here, he's actually connected his rook here, so maybe his pawns don't need to be doubled. But I felt that if I took with the knight and he takes back with the rook, then the e pawn is hanging, right? And plus I'm gaining a tempo on the rook, and I'm double attacking this h pawn. So I was confident that he would not take with the rook, so I went ahead and took knight takes g3, and I'm sure he would have taken with one of the pawns, and that he would not take this pawn because it wouldn't make sense, and then I would simply retreat the knight with tempo on the rook, and the knight would be safe, and he would be down the piece for one pawn. So I was confident that he would take back with the pawn, which he did. So f takes g3, And so I'm okay with that because now I still have my dark square bishop, and this diagonal here is weaker. And once this pawn falls, I was planning to move the bishop here to maybe use this uh, the pin on the rook. So after he took back, I knew that I had the intention of using my dark square bishop here, so I decided to reinforce the dark squares. And here I also knew that I did not want him to break the center. That would create open files for him to attack. And I had the idea here of pushing c5, gaining tempo on the knight. And once the knight moves, then I would push the other pawn, and this one would be protecting, and I would basically close off the d file permanently, and then this pawn here is totally isolated, and so that was my idea. And he went knight to b5, but here there is a threat of forking the king and the rook, so I kept an eye on that. And so that made me think a lot about my next move, because one of the options would be to play rook to c8, but I thought that if I did that, that's when he would break into the center, and then what? I take back, and then he takes back. It's all open now, and then he has this powerful pawn, and right, so that doesn't look good. And same thing, rook up here. Well, up here doesn't make sense. The fork is still there, or I don't know, casting or moving the king here. Whatever moves that I would make, his next move would be c takes d. So I thought that, you know what, let's push d4, gaining a tempo on his rook, permanently closing this. And so what if he delivers check? I would run, and if he takes, then I take back, and you know, that's fine, right? So I was even thinking perhaps running. Yeah, I couldn't run here, because if he takes here, then I cannot take back because of the pin on the pawn there. So I would lose a little bit more time trying to reroute the other rook to attack his knight. So so I guess this was a strong move, because now it's really shutting down his queenside attack here, and I have a pass pawn, and this pawn is under pressure. He still has you know, the possibility of challenging the g4 space to prevent my pawn from advancing, and then that would shut down my attack on this side, because I cannot connect the rook to this pawn. So that was one of his options, but he decided to go rook to f3. So I thought that was a mistake, because now this pawn's hanging. He should have perhaps simply retreated back, staying on the e file. But once he went to rook to f3, I think that was his first major mistake. So I went bishop takes e5, and now I'm really comfortable, because now this is a pass pawn. I have this huge pawn center here that's just about to storm down the center, and eventually one of these pieces need to be sacrificed to stop the pawn. So I'm really happy with this position. And plus, when the bishop takes e5, I'm actually protecting from the fork. So this was a really strong move for me. And so he goes rook to e1. So here I thought a long time, were there any tactics that I could do? Obviously, if I simply defend and he takes, I take back, and then he would get his rook back here, right? And plus I'm all open now. So defending the bishop was not a good idea with the pawn, I mean. Another option was to advance this pawn to put pressure on this rook here. So same thing. So if he takes this, he removes the defender of c7. So even if I take here, check, and I felt that I could perhaps trap the knight, but then this pawn hangs, and then I think he'll be fine. So connecting the rook to the bishop didn't really make sense, and even if I, even if I gain a tempo on this rook here, if I take here and I take with the pawn, so same thing, like he would simply take this next, and then if I take back, then he checks, and then he would be up a piece, even though this piece is quite inactive, right? But it's still like he's looking okay, right? So I felt that this was not the best way to go. So instead of being fancy, I chose the most simple approach with bishop back to b8, even though it's now kind of making my rook inactive. It's still exerting pressure here, and it did its job. It took this pawn here, and now I'm kind of under fire here with the two rooks. But so now it's just about keeping my cool, holding the position with simple logical moves, nothing fancy. So he goes rook to f1 with the idea of putting pressure on this pawn, and same thing. Would this make sense? Gaining a bit of space there, and then he would simply move back, and then how do you defend that pawn, right? So you know, then he would maybe find ways to exert pressure, and I didn't like that idea. So at this point, keep it simple. Retreat, rook to h7, holding off on the kingside attack for now. My goal here is to gain a little bit of space with the king here supporting this e-pawn, and then pushing, and then finding a way to, once I gain enough space, to make my other pieces active. Very simple, straightforward plan, nothing fancy. Rook goes back to e1. So I'm not comfortable with this pin, and plus, well, this pawn is okay now, it doesn't need the king anymore, but this one does if I want to advance this pawn. So I went king to d7, getting out of the pin, the x-ray I mean, and also controlling the knight here, and perhaps later on looking for a way to activate my other rook. So my next move was to push here, and the e-pawn would be defended, and then maybe putting the rook behind the e-pawn and just starting to use my pass pawns. And he goes a4. So yeah, I think he didn't have anything else to do. He's overprotecting the knight. That's fine. And yeah, the knight here has a great outpost, and it's really keeping my my rook here and even my bishop quite passive. So I think this is a strong piece for him, and he's just reinforcing it and really preventing my pawns from doing any opening up the queen side. So I think that's an okay move, and I continue with f5 with my plan, just, you know, gaining a lot of space here. Once I gain enough space here, then the rooks come in to support the pawns from behind, and then just push the pawns and then put lots of pressure, and hoping that he would exchange a piece for one of the pass pawns. So he goes h3. So I guess here he's looking for ways to break and create open files, and I guess if his next move is g4, then I don't have a problem with that, because I would simply keep the position as is, and if he takes, then I would take back, and my pawns are still protected. I'm fixing the double pawns, so I don't know what he's thinking here. He might be, but once he plays this move, then this move becomes impossible later on, and I think his double pawns are just as bad as my double pawns. So I go. So now I decide to go e5, knowing that the bishop is protecting, and the goal here is just to, you know, start taking a lot of space, making his rooks inactive. As long as there's a wall here and the rooks have no open files, I'm okay. And you know, making use of this bishop, and here I'm thinking of now I have enough space for a rook lift, and I would be fine once the rooks are active. So he goes rook to d4. So of course he's pinning this pawn here, and I have no problems with that because the pawn is protected. It's fine, and even though I'm being x-rayed, I decided to keep pushing with e4. So I'm really squeezing his rooks here, and this rook here, by moving the e pawn, I'm actually opening the diagonal for the dark squared bishop to be more active, and he doesn't have any squares to go to on the third rank, so this pawn I felt would eventually fall. But he found a move, rook to e3, taking advantage of the pin here. So the pin on the pawn. So this was okay, and so I could push even more, but I decided to, you know what, let's make my rooks active, and once the rooks are behind the pawns, then it's really I'm free. So I would just keep pushing, and these pawns are unstoppable. So here he goes knight to c3. This was probably his second biggest mistake because, well, he's created a situation where my pawn is having a double attack on both his pieces. So when I saw that, I'm like, well, okay, I just have to move my king out of the x-ray, and then he's forked, right? So I felt here that, of course, the knight being here, he's taking advantage of the pin, so he's fine, but he can still attack the king, so I don't want to move my king on the staying on the 7th rank here. So if either way I go, if I go here, he would simply deliver check with tempo, so that I don't have the opportunity to take, right? So I would retreat, and then he could move the rook. So I decided to go king to c8. So now there's no checks, so one of these pieces has to fall, and so I was really happy with that move, and I knew that the game was won. So he went knight takes e4, and of course, yeah, I don't know why he saved the knight instead of the rook. So anyways, I went d takes e3, and it was pretty much over. So at this point, you know, just exchange everything, and then I would be up a piece. So I was thinking he may want to take the other pawn or this pawn with tempo on my rooks. So anyways, he took knight takes c5. So 2 pawns for a rook is still down. You know, there is not enough compensation. So when I saw my rook was under attack, this was the time to exchange. So rook goes to d6, challenging the d file, and of course if he takes, that would be a huge mistake, because now, you know, there's no way to stop anything. So he's done if he exchanges rooks. So he goes rook to e3, and this is where I noticed that his knight was really trapped. Like the knight has nowhere to go. So the pawn is controlling this, the rook here, the rook's controlling this, the pawn's blocking. Here the rook is blocking. Here the king, and the rook. So I simply went bishop to a7, and that was basically it. He couldn't protect the knight anymore, and he went sorry. So then he went rook takes e3, and I was fine with that because now bishop takes c5, pinning the rook, and he resigned. So I hope you guys learned something from this, and I'll see you guys next time.